video where I look at the crypto market looking out a year. But this year, I think we're very lucky and fortunate to have Andy Pickering here. He is literally one of the world's best commentators on the crypto space. We've known each other for a while, and we're just going to have a conversation to really understand where we think it's going to go for this year, because you know, a lot of the crypto stuff is a little bit challenging, and so we want to give you a better view of something that you can actually relate to.
Well, thank you, Ed. That sounds like a lot of fun. Pleased to be here. Where do you want to start?
Look, last year we had a market that was a fantastic space. Like you really wish you'd gone all in at the start of 2021, but it was quite confusing for a lot of people. It's Web3, it's NFT, it's DeFi, it's decentralized exchanges, but it was a great year. So what do you think is the theme for the year?
The theme for 2022. Look, Ed, I think, you know, I could pick a number of different themes because, as you know, in crypto, there's always so much going on. There's a lot of different sectors to keep up with. But if I was going to drill it down, if you like, into one theme that I think can cover off a little bit of everything, I'm going to say the continual rise of mainstream adoption, because I think that covers everything. And it's really just a continuation of what we saw in 2021. So we saw a lot of new entrants into the market. And you said it yourself, you know, if at the start of the year you'd gone all in on, you know, NFTs or metaverse coins, or even any of these new smart contract platforms that are competing with Ethereum, you will have done very well. But I think that just continues this year because there are so many ways into the ecosystem now for new mainstream participants. DAXI, of course, is one of them. So for people that are wanting to, you know, dip their toes into the crypto wealth building game, then I think 2022 is a great way to begin.
What do you think are the three biggest things that'll happen in this year?
For me, you know, I would say I want to pick Bitcoin number one. Yeah. I'll tell you why in a second. I think I probably have to pick smart contract platforms, yeah, just because I think there's a huge need for that market. So
they had a big 2021, didn't they?
They certainly did. And number three, look, you know, I like Web3, metaverse, NFTs, yeah, and as much as that was a big part of last year, I think that continues as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, Bitcoin. Tell me about Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin's a fascinating one, right? Because obviously Bitcoin is, you know, the number one cryptocurrency. It always has been, in my view. It will remain so. You know, Bitcoin is best understood now as digital gold, and I think Goldman Sachs came out just last week and they put out a report saying that they see Bitcoin continuing to take market share away from gold. And of course, you know, it's only really in the last year or two that you've had the likes of Goldman and JP Morgan and all these guys come around to this view. Yeah. But I think that just continues to legitimize Bitcoin. But don't get me wrong, Bitcoin had a little bit of a lackluster Q4 last year. Bitcoin didn't go anywhere. It went sideways and down. It's the same to start off this year. But I think, you know, Bitcoin's position is just so strong. It doesn't matter if Bitcoin goes sideways or even down for the first Q1 or Q2 this year, that's fine. I think Bitcoin will really take off in the second half of this year. And look, we can talk about price targets if you like. Maybe, do you want to hear mine first?
You show me yours first.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Oh no, look, I'll be fascinated to hear where you think it'll go.
Well, I think it's, I'm sure you'll agree, Ed, I think it's a no-brainer that Bitcoin gets to 100K. Yeah. You know, it's just, you know, these psychological numbers, they kind of act like magnets for price on the way up, but you know, it needs to be on
They're
the way
a
up.
little bit dangerous, aren't they?
They can be dangerous, yes, but I think it's there's no way that Bitcoin doesn't get there. It's just a matter of whether we do it this year. But in my view, I'd be surprised if we didn't get there. But I think it's probably later in the year.
Yeah, and what we've learned is that we just don't know, and that's the really key thing for people that's our audience, that the audience for this video is that we want people to have this investment mentality. So there's sort of multi-year, couple of year view. For me, I don't think it matters whether we hit it 100K by the end of this year or whether we hit it at the end of next year. In reality, you can't pick. You can't say, well, I'm going to wait. All right, that's the classic way to miss out, right?
Well, that's exactly right. So if that's the case, then you know what would you say to new people? Because I know that you know the DAXI audience is there'll be a lot of people watching this that are potentially new to crypto or looking for a way in. They want to build their crypto wealth, but they've got to understand here that it doesn't happen overnight, and that's not the way to look at it. You want to have that long-term view, right?
And that's challenging. Look, that's really challenging for those of you that we know this video is going to go to a lot of people that don't own any crypto. And the reality is that this, what we call the crypto wealth space, which is people looking, putting the money that they can't afford to lose, not the sort of gambling buy a bit of Bitcoin because it's going to go up by 20 times or something like that. So we're talking about the money that is larger amounts of money. It's the important wealth. We only believe that literally maybe 2% of that market is actually in the space now. So we think now they're starting to come in because they hear these very successful banks and financial organizations are involved. And fundamentally, you've got to own Bitcoin. And the key thing that I think will happen with Bitcoin this year is actually it'll sort of split off from the rest of the crypto market. There'll be these new, for the last 12 years, there's been the crypto market, but now I think it'll split off into the payment space where I think the launch of the Chinese cryptocurrency, I think the launch of Facebook's DM Novi stablecoin market, I think they'll be substantial because it'll take the concept of using crypto as a payment system really into the mass market at a speed that we can't believe. You know, between them, they have billions of people.
Yeah, well, it's very hard to disagree there, Ed. And see, the funny thing about that is it just ties back into that theme, if you like, of mainstream adoption. So, you know, if Facebook do go ahead with, you know, DM or whatever they're calling it now, you know, then that just makes, you know, it brings X amount of new people into the system. It makes that adoption curve start to keep going up. And I think it's almost the same, Ed, with the regulatory environment. So I'm sure you kind of keep a close eye on what's happening in
I love it.
At various parts of the world, because all markets are different, all countries are different. I'd love to get your view, but what I find fascinating at the moment, because a lot of people obviously take their lead from the US, right? And I was amazed last year at the different politicians from both sides of the aisle. So Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as a whole is fast becoming, it's a bipartisan issue. So you've got supporters on both sides and detractors on both sides. The example I always I like to use is Ted Cruz, right? So Ted Cruz, he's a Texan, but Ted Cruz, to my surprise, last year he was one of the most articulate and knowledgeable proponents of what he thought the benefits of Bitcoin mining would be, not just for the state of Texas, but also for US as a whole. And you know, he also made the argument, of course, of looking at putting Bitcoin on the US Treasury Reserve. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but it's just the more that we have these mainstream political figures talking about the positives, again, that starts to drive the adoption.
Yeah, and look, I think on the subject of Bitcoin, I think it's really important that people understand that there are really big themes going through the financial world that are going to drive the value of Bitcoin. When we turn around and we talk about it so confidently, we're not talking about it because it's 44,000 or 70,000 or 100,000. That what's been driven here is that Bitcoin is evolving from its original white paper use case as an electronic cash system to this digital gold. But when they talk about digital gold, they're actually talking about it not as something which you're wearing in jewelry, but as a sort of benchmark or reserve or a financial base for the new financial system.
Well, it's a store of value, right?
Yeah, so that's that Ted Cruz thing where they're saying, you know, they add it to the Federal Reserve just like they add gold.
Yeah, and as I say, I'm not sure that that's going to happen overnight, but,
No.
but the fact that that is being talked about,
Yeah.
Bitcoin is only, what is it now, 12, 13 years old. It's come such a long way from being a sort of, an idea that was just very much a niche idea and a very controversial idea, but it's come such a long way. It's an asset that is very much in the form of being monetized as a stable store of value. But to get to where it needs to be, a sort of multi-trillion asset, it could be 10 trillion, could be 100 trillion on a sort of a long enough time frame. But what people have to understand is there's volatility involved in that new asset being monetized. So you have to understand if you're going to hold Bitcoin or any other crypto on a multi-year time horizon, you got to expect a volatility.
You got to expect some fluctuations. And so that's the first point that I think we want to make, right? The first point is that Bitcoin's hard money.
Yes.
It's the only hard money other than gold or silver in the world, other than precious metals. And the mindset that you should have is not worry too much about the price. Don't try and buy, tops and bottoms. The point is that, I bought some yesterday. So the point is that it's a matter of you building up hard money that is something that underpins your wealth, right? And you're going to own more and more Bitcoin. So the quicker you get into it and keep building it, the better.
That's right. And I think there's probably 2 points there, Ed. If you don't already have a position, then you got to look at it, as we keep saying, on a multi-year time horizon. But, so, I would just say, decide how much of your, disposable income or your potential investment portfolio, whatever it is, can be a little bit, or a little bit more if you want to be a bit aggressive. But then you just say, well, that's what it is. I'm prepared to hold that position for up to 10 years.
Yeah.
And then it's either go all in, or you.
Did you hear that? 10 years.
10 years.
Okay.
Or a little bit every
or a little
month.
bit longer.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's great. So the second point that you were making was around this whole space of this new Web3, this new blockchain-based structure, which is the assets we're talking about is Ethereum. We're talking about Polkadot, Chainlink, and a range of assets that Daxi is going to be involved with that really came to light in 2021 that are now massive assets. In reality, Ethereum is now being talked about at the same level as Bitcoin with the same sort of investment levels, and it's critical wealth portfolio. You just don't own Bitcoin. You also own some other sort of key multi-year assets. And so talk to me about Ethereum.
Ethereum is an interesting one, Ed. So, Ethereum, obviously the number 2 crypto asset by market capitalization.
By a long way.
By a long way. I think Ethereum has had, up until perhaps this Q1 2022, we'll see where we end up. But before this quarter, it's had 8 positive quarters in a row.
Yeah.
Certainly outperformed Bitcoin. But at the same time, you know, Ethereum is very much an asset in flux in terms of the ecosystem itself is transitioning to what we call Ethereum 2.0. So, you know, Vitalik and the Ethereum developers have a very ambitious roadmap. They're transitioning Ethereum to a proof of stake consensus mechanism. So that's all going to happen this year. So that should have taken place by, I think, the end of this year. So ultimately, the simple goal there is to scale the system so it will bring the gas fees down. So Ethereum, I think, is huge simply because Ethereum is home to all of the overwhelming majority of smart contract developers. So, you know, NFTs, metaverse applications, decentralized finance. The majority of that is still on
Daxi.
Ethereum. Daxi.
Yeah, our coins are on Ethereum.
That's right. It's all on Ethereum. So, you know, Ethereum is kind of the booming ecosystem, and you know, it's the smart contract platform to
$6 trillion. They did supposedly $6 trillion of transactions last year.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it?
It's crazy. And you imagine when they're saying every dollar transaction has to pay a fee to the system. So underlying the value of that is actual financial transactions of people using it. I think that's a critical thing for people to understand. So, prediction, 2022.
So, look, assuming, you know, if we think that Bitcoin goes to 100K, then you'd be silly to think that Ethereum couldn't go to 10K.
Yeah, think that it couldn't go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, where we sit at the start of the year, we're talking about, you know, over 100% growth. And whilst we don't want to, you know, we don't know what it's going to be, it can go up and down. The reality is that what you're talking about is the underlying momentum of mainstream users. Large organizations are all getting behind not only this, but also there'll be some of these other larger platforms and the other sort of stuff like Polkadot, like Chainlink.
Yeah, that's right, Ed. And I think it's also, you know, there's enough liquidity in the market. There are enough market participants in the market, and the market structure is becoming increasingly mature, right? So I think as we go forward, as much as there will always be volatility, the volatility is still, you know, dampened down.
Can you explain what volatility is for the guy?
So volatility, we simply mean, I suppose, extreme market movements, either to the upside or the downside.
Fluctuation of price, right?
Fluctuation of price. And so traditionally, crypto has always been exponentially more volatile than, you know, the stock market or the gold market or any other market.
So do you think we'll be more volatile this year than last year?
I think we'll be less. And I think increasingly as we go forward, we will be less. And the reason for that is simply because as there are, you know, more and more market participants, the market just becomes more mature. So even if it's still a kind of secular bull market on a long enough time frame, and I think that continues, it just means, like for example, last year we never really got that sort of euphoric blow off top that people were expecting to happen with Bitcoin. And so if we didn't get that kind of FOMO rally, it just means that we probably won't get the kind of same extended bear market either. So I think it's more like right now we might go through a little bit of a correction, a cool off period, but then we just resume the upward climb again, but it might not be so steep or fast. Could be, I don't know. What do you think, Ed?
Oh, look, I think it's very normal as markets mature for them to be less volatile. The real mindset thing, which is really what we're trying to convey here, is to understand that crypto is still going to be volatile. So when you look at your portfolio, you've got to expect it to be more volatile than other major asset classes.
100%. I think that's right.
Yet the market is maturing, and therefore, you know, if it does jump by 10% or 20% or whatever it jumps, like it's better than it used to be, but it's actually this it's going to be a volatile market this year, but it won't be as bad as normal, right?
That's right.
So this third area that you were talking about, which is the whole metaverse world. So even though it's not something really for the wealth, the wealth invested today, because that's going to drive the Web3 stuff, isn't it? It's going to drive the Ethereums and that market. But I think it's always useful because it's the stuff in the newspapers, it's the stuff in the magazines and blogs, right? So he knows a lot more about this than I do. So it's like,
yeah, well, it's what the kids are into, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so yeah, the reason I like, and I think we can kind of put three big trends into one here, because they all relate to each other. It's NFTs, it's Web3, it's metaverse, and a little bit they all cross over. They all kind of mean the same thing in different ways at a very high level. But the reason I think it relates to our kind of big theme, Ed, which of course is mainstream adoption, I think we started to see it last year. You're just going to see everyone from, let's say, a big global personalities, from sports stars to influencers like the Kardashians and the Paris Hiltons of this world, to leading basketball.
KTS.
Yep, leading basketball players, all these celebrities. Here in New Zealand, All Blacks are already into NFTs. I think that is going to continue, and by just their influence alone, a lot of people will start to get influenced and interested. We'll see it with big global brands as well. The likes of Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Burger Fuel, Starbucks. These brands are already starting to engage, and they just see it as an opportunity to do something that is fun, that is cutting edge, that is digital. We all spend time in digital worlds, so I think it all just makes sense, and it's just part of the puzzle, and it's part of the continual mainstream adoption curve.
And the important thing to understand about this is to look at how the first internet, so how Web 2 developed. It was, you had this original idea, which is Web 1, then you had the dot-com boom, okay? And in reality, the big winners in the dot-com boom were actually companies like Cisco building infrastructure, therefore Ethereum building infrastructure, right? And then you have the next generation of that website, which was the social media, and it was the younger people who got into social media first, right? So they drove that initial boom, and then old dudes like me came in later and sort of brought it in. And so that's what you're saying. So what you're saying is that the NFT world, that metaverse world, which is all frankly a little bit confusing to people like me, okay, I don't know any, I still don't understand why anyone would want to pay that sort of money, but everyone does, but that's a factor of the grey hair on my face. The point is that is driving the user volume, the money that will drive the Ethereums of the world, which will then catch the bigger and larger waves down the track.
You're exactly right, Ed. And look, listeners, if you do want to delve more into Web3, I actually did a video for what's on the Daxi YouTube channel up for the Crypto Wealth Cafe. I think it's called Web3. It's all about Web3 at a high level, so you can watch that. But in really simple terms, if Web 2 was all about the rise of Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, all these companies that give the user amazing free digital services, but at the cost of selling your data and just showing you endless ads, so the user becomes the product. Web3 at a high level is, in theory, the more that users use these Web3 platforms, they engage with Web3 services, they can own a piece of those services, and the early adopters get a little piece of the pie, and content creators, instead of just doing it for like Instagram likes, they can potentially earn a little bit of revenue, and NFTs are just one slice of that. Yeah, I think that's the promise and potential of Web3, is just everyone gets a little piece of the pie just for participating.
Well, that's great. Look, I just thought I might summarise
Please.
what we've said. So, look, the first thing is we're presenting this for the person who's not a crypto specialist, they're a wealth investor, this year, 2022, follows what was pretty spectacular year last year. What you're saying is that we've got a continuation of that, of the adoption into the mainstream. There's three major things you reckon would come through. Number one is Bitcoin, where we're really confident about Bitcoin this year. Secondly, Web3. So we're into your Ethereums, but also your Polkadots, your Chainlinks, and other ones like that. You see that continuing its evolution and being driven very much by this third area, which is still very, very speculative, so not something we touch as an organization, because we're not sure about the multi-year investment plays for the average person, but it's the buzz.
It's the buzz, and for the kind of I guess for the crypto wealth investor, the easiest way to look at it is you've got Bitcoin, because everyone likes Bitcoin.
Everyone's
Bitcoin
got to be in
is
Bitcoin.
Digital gold. You've got to have a little bit of Bitcoin. It's the reserve asset of the entire,
or a lot of Bitcoin,
crypto ecosystem, and then it's smart contract platforms.
Yeah.
So
Ethereum,
which is Ethereum, but it's also there's
the other ones coming through.
Avalanche, Solana. There's a whole lot of them, but that's just a massive and growing piece of the pie. I think this year.
Great. Is there any sort of outside things that you think are going to have a major impact on this space? I understand you don't know, but it's like
there's a number of things, Ed. So I suppose number one is there's regulatory risk or regulatory upside.
We're sure that regulations are going to be a major part of this year. Yeah?
That's right. So, when does Gary Gensler, head of the SEC, does he have the will or desire? Do the crypto lobbyist group change his mind? Can he approve a Bitcoin spot ETF? If he did, that would be incredible, absolutely massive. There's a lot of speculation.
There's no real threats, though. The issue with regulatory things is no real threat, because they've tried to close us down. The issue is how fast are they going to? Because the more regulated the market is, so that's Daxy's view. We want that, because what it does is it introduces a much larger group of participants into the marketplace.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think there's any. There's no. There used to be headlines that Bitcoin would be banned, right?
Yeah.
And we've moved on from that. Bitcoin is just, it's just how fast does it become part of the mainstream financial system?
Yeah, the other thing I think that'll be big this year, I think the external thing driving the industry will be inflation, and that can only be good. It can only be good for what we're doing, and no one knows the impact of that as far as the economic system. It could be very bad for the world economy. I'm not sure we're going to have that sort of hit this year, because we seem to have sailed through COVID reasonably well.
Yeah,
they're still printing money like crazy.
Well, they have printed a lot of money, but I think that the Fed, they're signalling that they want to taper it back a bit. So.
All of them are going to cancel it. The only difference is still sitting around. There's still all the money is around the place, and there's all the other inflation issues. But that's my question. My question really is would you agree that will be a big story of this year, and would you agree that it's good for us? Inflation?
Yeah. I think it seems like markets are okay to live with a little bit of rising inflation, especially if assets values are rising, which is what we've been seeing at the moment. And I don't think there's any desire from policymakers. They don't want to tank the market, so it's always a balancing act. And of course, we've got to keep the markets afloat but not overheated, as well as deal with the pandemic, which is touch wood, Ed, 2022 will be the year that we come out the other side of the pandemic. But of course, we said that at the start of last year. So you know, it's the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, that's great. I think the positive things is nearly all of the negative things that could impact the world are actually relatively good for the crypto market. Even regulations should be good for our market. So we're pretty excited about this year, and I think what we're talking about is we do expect some sort of volatility.
Yes.
Do take this portfolio view. Do buy the wealth markets and you know, I think the view is whenever the sort of market goes down a little bit, look at it as a buying opportunity.
That's right. All right.
Yeah, so enjoy this year.
All right. Well, Happy New Year, Ed. Great to see you, and I'm sure it'll be another fun ride.
It's going to be a wonderful year. Thanks a lot. See you later.